Hey everyone, haven't done this in a while, but I was cooped up in the house for a while, and well, something that happens when I get up early, at least early for me, is I get kind of restless in the late afternoon. So I figured, I want to get some exercise. So here I am, just walking around. So anyways, what to talk about today? Well, let's get back to roots a little bit, okay? Miniature war games. All right? Okay, how about this? Now, anyone who plays miniature war games happens to know this for a fact. At least, most of you will. You go out and you buy models. And some of you will, you'll go home and you'll put them together right away. You just can't wait to get them together and on the table and everything like that. That's fine. That's what some people do. It's not what I do. I wish I did that or could bring myself to do that, but I can't. Other people, especially, not just with miniature war games, but with like model kits, like in my case Gundam, but in other people, planes and tanks and all that kind of stuff. They have a backlog of models to build. This backlog can get pretty big. If you watch some of my older videos from a few years ago, when I was living up north and I had that an apartment, I had that wall of model kits. It was a stack of model kits that was like, it was taller than I was. That stack of model kits is probably about 6.5 feet off the ground. There was a large amount of unbuilt model kits, and they're pretty much all Gundams, but still, you just see a kit and you want it. You look at it, you're like, this is here now. I have to have the money. I want to buy this. I want to buy this kit. So you'll buy this kit and you'll take it home. And you're like, well, I don't have time right now, or I'm working on a different model right now. I don't have the time to devote to it, so I'm going to put it away. I'll build it later. So, you put it away. And sometimes you do build it later. And sometimes you don't. Sometimes you build it very, very much later. We're talking like several years later. Like some modelers, like the older guys that are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever, they'll be digging through, all their models that have probably filled up their attic or their basement, or if they're lucky enough to have like a spare room in their house, it'll be in their hobby room. They'll be digging through a pile, looking for some old, and they'll come across this model kit and they're like, oh man, I forgot I had this thing. They'll remember back to when they bought it. It was probably like 10, 20, 30 years ago. They just never got around to building it. Well, occasionally, rarely, the same can be said of people who play miniature war games. You buy a model, sometimes, typically, as soon as it comes out, and some people will then just go and they will buy, they will go and build that model immediately, which, if you're playing a miniature war game, completely makes sense. Because, as much as this model is there for you to enjoy it, enjoy looking at it, it's not just a static piece of art. It's for you to actually use in the game. So, there's not much point in having it sit around and do nothing. So a lot of people just build them, even if they never paint them. And there are several people that will never paint their models. They put them together, they put them on the table, and that's good enough. Now, other people, such as myself, I myself am a perfectionist. I hate putting together a model and then, you know, not having it painted. And not just painted, but like painted really well so that I'm happy with it. It takes a long time to do that. I tend to have a lot of unbuilt models lying around because, you know, I don't want to just build it and then it just sits there. You know, with these models, I mean, they're not static pieces you put on your shelf. They're something you actually use in the game. And they tend to be rather expensive, you know? So, with them being that expensive, you want to take good care of them, especially if you did a really careful job of assembling them, pinning them, magnetizing them, putting on bits, custom parts, building a scenic base. Even more so if you do a really good paint job on it. You don't want to just stick it wherever there's vertical space and then leave it to collect dust or just wait to be knocked off the shelf by either yourself in a moment of inattention or someone else in your household. That sucks. So you got to put it away. Where are you going to put it away? Well, typically people have foam in bags. You know, you have your army transports, your battle foam, sable, stuff like that. You know, there's companies that just make this stuff. Well, like anything in the wargaming industry, it is expensive. And if you've been in gaming long enough, you know how expensive it can be. So, you try and come up with ways to store your army, but do it inexpensively. Because, you know, I've bought some of this, you know, battle foam and army transport stuff, and, you know, I know firsthand it is not cheap. It can be very expensive. And it's not even stuff that you can put on the table. They're not models. All they're doing is just storing and transporting your army. You know? So, you want to spend as little amount of money as possible. Well, one thing that I've found that you can do is, you know, you can try and get your hands on just some foam and something to put it in, and then go from there. Unfortunately, it goes a little beyond that. I mean, if you really wanted to be as cheap as possible, you could, I mean, for like a small army, we're talking like Malifaux, you could be as cheap as just getting sheets of bubble wrap and a lunchbox and just layering in the bubble wrap and the models, and then you're good to go. It's really cheap. Well, there's something else that you might be able to do that is a bit more expensive. Hey. Something that's a bit more expensive, but work for larger armies, work in the longer run, be a little bit easier. And this involves getting eggshell foam. If you don't know what I mean by eggshell foam, I mean, you know, that foam that's like has those waves, kind of like the cardboard crate that eggs come in. It's wavy like that, but it comes in big sheets. You get some of that. You cut it to the right size. Then you go down to your local thrift store. Second time around, something like that. And you try and find like a suitcase. A hard shell suitcase if you can. A fabric one if you can't. Just make sure it's the size that you want and that can fit all the layers of foam. Just layer that stuff in. and the eggshell shape in it will create like natural like recesses for you to put your models in. And then you just keep layering on the foam. You know, you do that, and you can have yourself a very viable army transport for, let's say, depending on the price you're able to get the suitcase for, 10 to 30 bucks. And an army transport bag without foam is typically going to cost you what? 40 if you're lucky, 50 usually, probably about 80 or 90 if it comes with foam, and that's for just one of the standard size ones. You're going to be able to fit some troops in there, maybe a rhino if you took one of the big chunky foam things, and that's about it. You get a big suitcase and you get some eggshell foam, so you can have yourself a very viable army transport. So that's what I've been trying to do. Now, I've tried getting just a suitcase and just straight up foam, and then cutting that foam with like a foam cutter, and I've met with mixed results. You have to get like the right kind of foam cutter. We're talking like a heavy duty thing, and yeah, and you better cut that stuff outside, because the fumes that it creates from melting foam, you do not want to bring that stuff in. Yep, that's right. Yep. So, army transports. Then you have to like measure the thickness of foam you want. You got to measure out the pieces. You got to draw the designs, and then hope that you didn't mess something up. Because getting like thick like foam cut the size you want, it's not exactly cheap. I myself had gone to like an upholstery place, and I got foam cut to the size for the suitcase I had, and it cost about 40 bucks for all these layers of foam that I needed. Not the cheapest, but it can work if you have some very odd, unusual size pieces, especially if you're doing vehicles. If it's vehicles, then it suddenly becomes much more viable. But anyways, that are my thoughts on custom army transports. So anyways, that's about all that I'm gonna talk about that for this time. If any of you out there have cheapo but effective army transport ideas, go ahead and leave them down in the comment section below. I'll make sure to read them. You help me out, help your fellow game enthusiasts out. That's all I have for this time, and I'm signing out.